Early voting underway in the state of Texas. Joining me right now to talk about the latest Texas and national political news, GOP political strategist, also co-founder of MustReadTexas.com, Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Chad. Doing great. Good morning.
Thanks for coming on today. Early voting has started, and over the weekend, Politico with a story on Wendy Davis and the long shot campaign that she has, and it really doesn't help out the Davis campaign at all. I have not seen any good stories for the Davis campaign, except maybe for a few endorsements out there from local newspapers, mainly in liberal cities.
Yeah, I mean, she has gotten some big city newspapers. I noted with interest she did not get her hometown newspaper, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. That is generally a more conservative newspaper, so that perhaps that's why. But yeah, I mean, the Politico story, in a way, it couldn't have been timed, worse for her campaign. I mean, you have early voting starting this morning. You have, folks beginning to vote. And, I mean, last night, apparently, she held a conference call with volunteers, trying to get them fired up. And obviously, these kinds of stories, have to dampen enthusiasm for voters, for donors, and for volunteers.
Yeah, I just you couple this with the USA Today. Last Thursday or Friday, they came out that she had one of the top 5 worst ad campaign commercials, and then you take that again with Politico saying that she ran one of the worst campaigns of 2014. Just not good news for Wendy Davis. How does this race and other races you think? How do you think these will go? I mean, obviously, it's going to be a big Republican year here in Texas. But some of those down ballot races, how do you think they haven't received a lot of attention out there? Some of the more interesting races have to do, I think, with the lieutenant governor's race, because you've seen a lot more newspapers endorsing Abbott, but also endorsing Letitia Vanderpoot that have been endorsing Dan Patrick. So how do you think that dynamic plays?
Yeah, first of all, I just haven't seen a lot of evidence that newspaper endorsements have made a big difference in Texas.
Yeah.
It's possible they do. I think they probably do impact down ballot where people are less educated, less informed. Yes, Vanderpoot's gotten most of the newspaper endorsements. That could be because it's possible Dan Patrick didn't do any interviews. I don't know. Generally speaking, newspapers do not like hard-charging conservative candidates and elected officials, and so Dan is certainly that. But, look, at some level, this comes down to name ID, and I think in every single statewide race in Texas, the Republican will have stronger name IDs than the Democrat. I think that's true in the Lieutenant Governor's race, and I think it's true in all the races. I think the two that I'm probably watching with interest to see if the margins are appreciably closer are Comptroller and Attorney General. Comptroller because you have a Democrat who's spent a decent amount of money early, and Mike Collier, who's also won some endorsements as well, and then potentially the Attorney General's race, just because there is this question surrounding Paxton regarding the state securities board and that issue that was addressed several months ago. That you never know if that's fully settled or not. And of course, the endorsements have gone to Sam Houston and over Ken Paxton as well. At the end of the day, Chad, I generally think, all these statewide races are going to be double digits. They're going to be in the 9 to 12 point range probably, and there's probably not going to be much difference.
Visiting with Matt Mackowiak. Of course, you can go to his website, MustReadTexas.com. He's also GOP political strategist. Taking a look at midterm elections just around the U.S., what are you thinking? Are you thinking Republicans take the Senate, or do you think they fall a few votes short there, or a few seats short in the Senate?
I do think they take it. To me, the biggest question will be North Carolina, where the Republican has been trending upward, but has been behind pretty much the whole time. But if you look at all the other states, Alaska, Arkansas, Louisiana, Iowa, they're all look very, very solid. And you already have 3 states that are basically done with Montana, West Virginia, and South Dakota. So to me, I see several paths to get to that, the number that you need. I don't see a state where they're going to turn a Republican state, into a Democratic state. They tried in Kentucky. the DSCC pulled out last week. They're making a little bit of noise about Georgia, which I guess is probably going to go through a runoff. But, ultimately, Chad, I think because of the Louisiana system, the way they don't have primaries, and because Georgia goes to a runoff, I think we're probably not going to know 100% for sure who controls the Senate the day after the election. You're going to probably have a December runoff in Louisiana and a January runoff in Georgia. But generally speaking, I think the Republicans are in really well positioned to take the U.S. Senate back. It's not really a question of how many votes they have.
If Republicans take the Senate back, and I agree with you, it's looking like they will, at that point, how quickly do we see, some would argue that it's already started, but how in your face how soon do we start seeing the in your face campaigning for 2016, Hillary Clinton getting out there, some of the other big name Republicans getting out there? I know it's, they've been out there, but it really hasn't been as in your face as it could be.
Well, one of the interesting things about this, Chad, is going to be it's a very different thing for Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and Rand Paul to be in the Senate majority than it has been to be in the Senate minority. Because at the end of the day, the easiest vote you can ever cast is to vote against something that passes. Because you can still remain, ideologically pure and righteous, but you don't have the responsibility of keeping the thing from passing. It's going to be very different for those three senators who are all presumed to be running for president. If they're in the majority, they're going to have to be part of the majority and passing legislation. And Republicans, look, this whole thing comes down to forcing President Obama to veto popular legislation. It's not just the repeal of Obamacare; it's other things too. Keystone Pipeline, economic bills, tax reform, these kinds of things. So. I do think the presidential campaign probably does start. I think even Cruz and somebody on CNN said he expects people will be making decisions between January and June. And so, yes, I think in that first quarter, perhaps maybe the second quarter of next year is when you're going to start seeing announcements for president. But it is going to complicate things in the United States Senate, where you have three senators who are likely running for president.
Yeah. Visiting with Matt Mackowiak. Matt, what can people find on mustreadtexas.com today and going throughout the week?
Yeah, news about Ebola is up. You have Cruz has an op-ed in the USA Today, a national op-ed in the USA Today, which talks about what he wants to see the Republicans do if they have the majority. Certainly a lot of news about the endorsements for governor. You can find it all at mustreadtexas.com.
All right, Matt Mackowiak. Folks can also follow you at Matt Mackowiak on Twitter. As always, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Chad. Have a great week.
You too. That's Matt Mackowiak.